I walked into another interview, my 73rd in 8 months, wearing the same damn navy jacket I'd ironed so many times it looked shiny under the fluorescent lights. My tie was fine, shirt was clean, but I could already feel the heat rising behind my ears. I knew that look the guy across the table gave me, the one that said, "You again?" Davis Larner, Vice President of Strategy at Brenton and Company Tall, slick, reading my resume like it smelled like trash. "These client accounts," he said, eyebrows raised, "they look inflated." "They're not," I said, already gripping the side of the chair harder than I meant to. "You expect me to believe you led expansion across 5 markets without a big-name firm behind you?" "I built that portfolio at Halston Global," I said, "before the new regime came in and shoved out every senior they didn't like." He didn't even look up, just snorted. "Anyone can write buzzwords and numbers. Got anything to prove it?" Before I could respond, the side door opened. Some guy in a tailored charcoal suit walked in, holding a phone to his ear, then stopped dead in his tracks. "Mason?" "Mason Blake." I stood. Elias Bowen, CEO of Apex Supply. One of the biggest turnarounds I'd ever pulled off, back when I still had a title worth putting on a business card. Elias turned to Davis, grinning. "This guy saved our ass when we were circling the drain. We'd be gone if it weren't for him." He slapped a hand on my back like we'd just closed another deal. "Your firm lands him, we're tripling our spend." Guaranteed. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Davis blinked like he couldn't process what just happened. Elias was already halfway out the door. "You're the only reason we're even talking to Brenton," he added, and then he was gone. Now Davis couldn't flip pages on my resume fast enough. He cleared his throat. "That was unexpected. You're clearly more than your resume." "I've always been more than the paper," I said, watching his whole body language shift. "We'll need to fast-track your application. Honestly, we should look at director-level roles." He started rambling about comp, timelines, onboarding, like the past 20 minutes hadn't happened. I nodded, said the right things. But I didn't smile, not once. Because while he was scrambling to impress me, I was still deciding if I even wanted to work under a guy who needed someone rich to vouch for me, just to believe I belonged in the room. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Brenton's offer letter. The money was good, better than anything I'd seen in months. Would have paid off my cards, patched the hole in my savings, maybe even let me sleep without a pit in my gut for once. But it didn't sit right. They didn't respect me until someone rich walked in and said I was worth something. Elias opened the door. Not my work, not my numbers, not the years I'd busted my ass building teams across time zones. That was the part that stuck in my throat. 8 months earlier, I'd been executive director of strategy at Halston Global. I had real power. I led a team across 5 countries. Big clients, long hours, real wins. My calendar was packed with back-to-back calls, and when I spoke in meetings, people listened. My word carried weight. Then the buyout hit. Some private equity group out of Connecticut swept in like they owned the place. Brought in their golden boy to shake things up. Preston Calloway, 36, MBA from Princeton. Too good at golf for someone with no soul. He called me into his office 2 weeks in. Didn't even look up from his phone. "Mason, you've done great work," he said, scrolling like I was just a calendar notification. "But we're going in a new direction. Faster, younger, more aggressive." Translation? They wanted guys who wore $5,000 watches and name-drop professors from business school. The old boys club was closing ranks, and I wasn't on the list. Within 6 weeks, every senior over 40 who wasn't Ivy connected or tied into the venture firm's inner circle was gone. They didn't even try to hide it. It was a purge, efficient, clean, and brutal. They handed me a severance package that looked generous on paper, but it was a hush deal, not a thank you. Just enough to keep me quiet, not enough to forget it. At first I told myself I'd bounce back. My track record spoke for itself. Hell, I built Halston's expansion into Latin America from scratch. But every interview played out the same way. A polite smile, a nod, then a slow, skeptical spiral. No big-name logo on my resume anymore. No club connections, no executive golf circles. I started to feel like I was talking to people who had already decided I was lying. Davis Larner was just the latest. They all had that same tone, polished, smug, like they were too smart to be fooled. It stopped being about finding the right fit. I just wanted someone to believe me. That offer letter from Brenton should have been a win. But I kept picturing Davis, arms folded, doubting every word out of my mouth, until Elias walked in. And suddenly I wasn't a risk anymore. I was a trophy. I closed the laptop and pushed it aside. That's when my phone buzzed. Text from Keith Rowan. "Still on for coffee tomorrow? Got something to run by you." Keith, solid guy. Used to run ops at Halston before Preston canned him too. Smart, strategic, always 10 steps ahead. He wasn't the type to send vague messages unless something was cooking. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." That coffee wasn't just a meeting. It was a door I didn't know I needed, and once I walked through it, I wasn't coming back. Keith was already at the cafe when I got there, sitting in the corner, like always, black coffee in front of him, legal pad already out. He looked exactly the same. Same old Levi's, same navy windbreaker, same eyes that didn't miss a damn thing. "Good to see you, Mason," he said, not standing. "You look tired." "Feels like I've been auditioning for people I could run circles around." He nodded like he'd heard it before, probably had. "I've been doing some freelance work for a few Halston clients. Quiet stuff. They keep asking the same question I sat down, which is, why isn't there a firm that actually understands non-Western markets?" I raised an eyebrow. "They think the big consultancies don't get it?" "They know they don't get it," Keith said. "They show up with data dumps and cookie-cutter playbooks. They don't listen. They don't adapt. They think one framework fits all." He flipped his legal pad toward me. Notes everywhere. Arrows, bullet points, call-outs. "What if we built something lean? Strategy backed by real data, but layered with cultural fluency? Like what we used to do, before the place turned into a VC frat house." "Exactly," he said. "You, me, and I was thinking we pull in Chase for digital." That stopped me for a second. Chase Ngozi, our transformation lead, sharp as hell. Got cut during the same bloodbath I did. Lived and breathed execution. "Think he'd go for it?" I asked. "If he's still pissed off, yeah." I pulled the Brenton offer letter from my bag and slid it across the table. Keith scanned it without reacting. The energy changed. Napkins turned into notepads. His legal pad filled up with company names, client pain points, contact lists. We started blocking out services, price points, who we'd target first, what we'd call it. 3 hours went by in what felt like 20 minutes. We sketched the bones of what would become Axis Strategies, a consultancy built for the markets no one wanted to learn and the people no one wanted to hire. Before we left, I sent Chase a text. "You around this week? Got something brewing, and it's big." By Monday morning, I was staring at a draft of a goodbye email to Davis. I kept it short, polite, no edge, no anger. Just, "Thank you for the opportunity. I've decided to pursue a different path. Wishing you and your team success." His reply came within an hour. "We can increase the package. Elias asked about you again." I sat there for a second, staring at the screen, then typed back, "This isn't about money." And that was it. I was off the grid. No corporate safety net. No fancy title. No steady paycheck. Just an idea that made me sit up straighter for the first time in 8 months. The first Monday after I turned Brenton down, I parked in front of Keith's place, walked around to the back, and stepped into the garage that was now our headquarters. Cold concrete floor, folding table, 2 chairs, one old desktop tower that wheezed louder than Chase's jokes. That was Axis Strategies on day 1. We didn't care. The 3 of us were lit up in a way none of us had felt in years. No meetings about meetings, no layers of ego to tiptoe around. Just work, actual thinking. We lived off our severance, worked 12-hour days like it was nothing. We had no logo, no pitch deck, no marketing. But we had each other, and a list of ex-clients who'd quietly stayed in touch. Our first break came from Damon Whitaker, a mid-level strategy guy at a consumer brand I'd trained a few years back. He remembered a workshop I ran in Singapore and reached out over LinkedIn. "We want to expand in Southeast Asia," he told me on the call. "Our current consultants say the markets aren't ready." But I remember how you think I glanced at Keith, then at Chase. We were in. The budget was thin, but the brief was perfect. Wide, open-ended, and full of landmines the big firms were too lazy to avoid. We knew exactly how this game was played. While the others pulled recycled white papers, we dug into local buying habits, regional slang, competitor foot traffic, even mobile data from outdoor markets. We found what no one else was looking for, and told a story their board couldn't ignore. Damon called after the final presentation. "We expected a PowerPoint. You delivered a blueprint. That single project opened 3 more doors. And then 5. Then we started getting inbound. 4 months in, we rented a cramped office above a hardware store in Arlington. 2 desks, 2 analysts, and a coffee maker that smoked every third brew. Then Chase got us a spot at the Global Market Summit in Boston. Not main stage, not yet. Just a 40-minute slot on one of the smaller stages. But still. We titled our session, Invisible Growth. Where the data stops, but demand begins. No flash, no clickbait. Just our model, our results, and our point. Traditional firms miss entire markets because they refuse to look past what's comfortable. We were 30 minutes in when I spotted him. Elias Bowen, standing in the back, arms folded, watching. I hadn't even known he was attending. When we opened the floor for Q&A, he didn't raise his hand. He stood and spoke straight into the microphone. "Your projections beat every consultant I've worked with. Brenton must be kicking themselves right now." The room fell silent. Every exec in there turned to look at me. I didn't flinch. I chose to build something different. Elias nodded once, then sat down. That was it. But it was enough. Afterward, people lined up to talk. Business cards, follow-ups, invitations. Reporters wanted quotes. Strategy heads asked for meetings. But one moment carved itself into my memory and stayed there. Across the room, near the far wall, stood 2 men, Davis Larner and Brenton's CEO, Gerard Walsh. Watching Elias shake my hand, watching execs treat me like I was the next wave, not yesterday's news, watching the guy they dismissed as a resume exaggerator take all the oxygen out of the room. Davis didn't say a word, but I saw the twitch in his jaw. He knew. I wasn't just real, I was rolling. 6 months after the summit, Axis was 20 people deep and growing faster than we could hire. Our office buzzed like a trading floor. Client calls, whiteboards packed with market insights, interns running coffee in one hand and regional consumer data in the other. Then Yara burst through my door, tablet in hand, eyes wide. "You need to see this." I looked up from the ops budget. "What now?" She spun the tablet around. Brenton had just launched a new division. Sleek logo, shiny press release, a full landing page that read like someone printed our mission statement and slapped their name on it. Emergent Markets Division. Language, strategy, even phrasing, all ours. Word for word in some places. My stomach dropped. "Guess who's running it?" Yara said, scrolling to the leadership section. Davis Larner. His smirk right there under the title, Executive Vice President, Emerging Strategy. "They're copying everything," she said, "and now they're undercutting our rates by 30%. I exhaled through my nose and sat back. The anger came fast. But not panic. We'd expected this. Brenton had the money, the reach, the muscle. Of course they were going to come after the space we carved out. Keith walked in a few minutes later, holding 2 coffees. I didn't say a word, just turned the tablet. He barely blinked. "They've got the war chest to bleed out a year or 2, he said, handing me the coffee. "But they can't copy how we think." He was right. We had something they didn't even know existed, a new framework we'd been testing in the background, away from client decks and public write-ups. It had started as a side project after a client complained about hiring in frontier markets. Too hard to screen, too messy, to unpredictable. We took that as a challenge. 3 weeks. That's how long it took us to finish the prototype. We built a model for assessing talent, not by GPA or title, but by adaptability, context fluency, and unconventional problem solving. Stuff the big firms laughed at. Stuff that actually mattered in fast-changing markets. Our beta client was a mid-sized logistics company trying to grow in South America. They handed us a list of candidates their HR team had already rejected. 3 months later, the COO called me personally. "These people wouldn't even make it past our filter," he said, "but they're killing it. They think faster, adjust quicker, and they don't choke under pressure." That was the moment. We stopped treating it like a bonus offering and started building it into our core. We rebranded Axis not just as a market consultancy, but a pipeline for overlooked talent, people who got passed over because they didn't fit a spreadsheet. Chase came up with the tagline, "Find the edge where no one's looking." We reworked the site, adjusted our service tiers, rolled out the talent framework across our top clients. Suddenly, the pitch wasn't just why Axis, it was who we found that no one else could. Meanwhile, Brenton's shiny new division kept pumping out recycle decks and LinkedIn posts. They had the budget, sure, but they didn't know the terrain. Keith said it best in our weekly huddle. "Brenton has the money. We have the edge. Let's make them bleed for every inch," and we did. 2 months later, I got an email from Brenton's director of client services. Subject line, "Request for meeting, Axis Strategies." I already knew what it was. The timing, the tone, it smelled like surrender. He showed up at our office 2 days later, pinstripe suit, too much cologne, and a leather folio he gripped like a life raft. Keith and I met him in the conference room. "We'd like to discuss acquiring Axis Strategies," he said after 5 seconds of small talk. "Your framework is gaining attention." I leaned back. "Who pushed for this?" He cleared his throat. "Gerard Walsh, our CEO. But Davis would oversee the integration." I smiled. "Perfect. Let's schedule it." We set the meeting for the following Thursday. I looped in Keith and brought in Dana Chen, our legal counsel, ex-DOJ, sharp as hell, and allergic to corporate BS. Brenton's HQ had a lobby like a luxury hotel, and the same forced smile behind every desk. Gerard Walsh greeted us with a warm handshake, fake casual tone, and just enough charm to make you forget he'd ghosted us a year ago. Davis sat across the table, tight-lipped, eyes like ice. They jumped into the pitch immediately. Numbers, global reach, merge platforms. They wanted our framework, our people, and our playbook. Called it a strategic alignment. "You'd retain leadership of your group," Gerard said, "but ultimately, you'd report to Davis." I didn't respond. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Here's our counter." Gerard blinked. Davis didn't move. "Our conditions are simple," I said. "Axis stays autonomous. We operate as a separate division focused on inclusive hiring and emerging strategy. We retain full authority over team, method, and client selection." Davis's jaw tightened. "That's not how we operate." "Exactly," I said. "And that's why we're outperforming you." Dana slid the papers across the table. "This outlines equity terms, leadership structure, and performance triggers." Gerard read fast. Davis didn't touch it. "You want to run your own shop, inside ours?" Gerard asked. "We don't want it," I said. "We require it." There was a long pause. Gerard looked conflicted, impressed, maybe even intrigued, but still holding the leash. Davis finally spoke. "You realize what you're asking goes against every structure we've built." "Maybe it's time you rebuild," Keith said, calm, dead serious. Gerard looked at me. "We'll need to review this." "Please do," I said, standing. "We're not here to be absorbed. We're here to change the game Davis didn't stand, just stared at the table like he was hoping it would crack open and swallow us." 3 weeks of back and forth later, Brenton caved. Not completely, but enough. Axis got acquired, sure, but we kept the core, our team, our methods, our control over hiring and strategy. We didn't get folded in, we got carved out. with board-level protection. I took the title Head of Strategic Innovation, but I knew what it really meant. They wanted the engine. They just didn't know how to drive it. Day one, I stood in front of the entire company for a live-streamed all-hands. I pulled up slide after slide, market growth, client retention, talent performance. None of it spun, none of it inflated, just the raw results. "These aren't anomalies," I said into the mic. "We didn't succeed despite our people. We succeeded because of them. First row, center seat. Davis Larner, arms crossed, stone-faced, not a blink." I kept going. "Our model works because it looks where others don't. We don't check boxes. We look for potential where the market has been taught to ignore it." Applause at the end was polite, professional, but not loud. Brenton's people were still watching from the sidelines, waiting for us to fail. I could feel it. The pushback started within 2 weeks. Team leads complained our assessments were too complicated. Talent partners said our hiring pipeline was too unorthodox. One VP asked why we were fixing what wasn't broken. Behind it all, Davis said nothing. But I knew he was backing them, quietly, passively, letting the pressure build without putting his name on it. Didn't matter, because while they argued, results rolled in. Our hires, the ones they thought were risky, were outperforming traditional candidates across the board. Project turnaround time dropped. Client satisfaction rose. Attrition fell. One unit saw a 28% bump in delivery efficiency, just from a team we rebuilt using our model. At the next board meeting, I pulled up side-by-side performance charts. Our talent framework versus Brenton's old one. One of the directors leaned forward. "Why weren't we doing this all along?" Silence. Gerard glanced at Davis, but Davis had no answer. Just looked down at his tablet and nodded slightly like he was trying to disappear. That was the shift. Quiet at first, but real. Senior staff started coming to us with questions. Our language showed up in internal documents. One regional lead asked to shadow our hiring process. The change was happening, whether the old guard liked it or not. 3 months after that board meeting, I got an email from Davis. Subject: "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a solid minute before replying, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office." He showed up on time. No assistant, no suit. Just a plain button down and a face that looked like it hadn't slept much. He sat across from me, didn't waste time. "You were right," he said. "We've overlooked a lot of good people." I didn't gloat, didn't smile. I just said, "You can't fake results." He nodded slowly, like it finally sunk in, like maybe he was starting to understand this wasn't about politics or posturing. It was about building something that actually worked. He didn't ask for credit, didn't apologize either. But for the first time since I'd met him, he looked like someone willing to learn. That was enough. For now. A year into the acquisition, the shift was undeniable. You could see it in the project rosters, hear it in how managers talked, feel it in the culture. Teams that used to look like copies of the same 5 resumes now looked like the actual world. And the results? They spoke louder than any memo ever could. Brenton didn't just adapt, they evolved. The industry took notice. We got asked to consult on frameworks. Companies rewrote hiring protocols to mirror ours. Axis wasn't a scrappy outsider anymore. It was the standard, the benchmark, the model to beat. One night, I stayed late to finish prep for a summit keynote. The floor was mostly empty, lights dimmed. I stepped out of my office, and there he was. Davis leaning against the wall like he'd been waiting a while. He looked different. Not just older, tired, but in a way that didn't look worn out. More like stripped down. No suit, no tie, just khakis and a plain gray sweater. He straightened up when he saw me. "That kid from Axis you hired, Jamal," he said. "He just saved a $12 million account. I passed on him. Twice I didn't flinch. He's exceptional. Just needed someone to look past the resume." Davis gave a slow nod, then hesitated. Not like he didn't know what to say, but like he wasn't used to saying it out loud. "You always planned this, didn't you?" "Not the buyout," I said, "but the part where we stopped letting people like you decide who's worth believing." "Yeah." He didn't argue, Didn't explain, didn't try to spin it into some humble rebrand. Just looked at me and said, "Well, it's working." I nodded once. He turned and walked down the hallway, steps quiet, head low. I watched him go, thinking about how many Jamals he probably passed on. Not because they weren't ready, but because he never looked. That was the real win. Not the money, not the press, not even the title. The win was knowing people like Jamal, like me, wouldn't have to prove themselves to someone who didn't care to understand in the first place. Axis wasn't built to prove a point. It was built so no one would ever have to.